Close your eyes now, and let yourself drift into the quiet world of nature, where time moves differently, and everything finds its own gentle rhythm. Imagine, if you will, a forest at twilight. The trees around you are breathing, yes, truly breathing, just as you are now. With each slow breath you take, know that a single large oak tree is releasing enough oxygen for 2 people to breathe comfortably for an entire year. As you settle deeper into this moment, that tree continues its patient work, molecule by molecule, sustaining life without effort, without hurry. Let's walk deeper into this forest together, where the ground beneath us is softer than you might expect. Beneath your feet, the earth is alive with an ancient network, a wood wide web, they call it. The trees here aren't standing alone, they're connected through their roots by delicate threads of fungi, sharing nutrients, water, and even warning signals about dangers approaching. A mother tree, old and generous, can recognize her own seedlings and send them extra nutrients through this underground network, ensuring her youngest have what they need to grow. The forest is a family, communicating in whispers we're only beginning to understand. As we pause here, notice the moss growing on the north side of the trees, nature's softest compass. But there's something even more remarkable. Moss has no roots, no flowers, no seeds in the traditional sense. It's been essentially unchanged for over 450 million years, one of Earth's most patient living things, simply absorbing what it needs from the air and rain, asking nothing more from the world. When it dries out completely, it doesn't die, it simply waits, sometimes for years, until the rain returns to wake it gently back to life. The light is fading now to that deep blue hour, and if we're very still, very quiet, we might see deer emerging from the deeper woods. These gentle creatures have been walking these same paths for so long that they've created what we call deer highways, routes passed down through generations, each doe teaching her fawns the safest way through the forest. And here's something wonderful: when a deer lies down to rest, her heart rate slows to just 30 to 40 beats per minute, half of what it is when she walks. She knows how to let go completely, trusting the forest to keep watch while she dreams. Above us now, the first stars are appearing, and the trees are preparing for their own kind of sleep. Trees actually rest at night. Their branches droop by as much as 4 inches as water pressure decreases and their biological processes slow. They wake again with the sun, lifting their branches to greet the light, in a rhythm as reliable as your own breath. In and out. Rising and falling. Everything in nature knows when to grow and when to rest. And so, as we stand here together in this darkening forest, surrounded by breathing trees and ancient moss, by sleeping deer and the gentle underground conversation of roots, let yourself remember, you too are part of this system, this beautiful, slow, patient web of life. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Like the forest, you can simply rest. The darkness has settled now, but the forest hasn't gone silent, it's simply changed its voice. Listen, can you hear it? That's the sound of the night shift beginning, a whole new world waking as we prepare to sleep. Somewhere high in the canopy, an owl opens her eyes. Her vision is extraordinary, but here's what's truly remarkable: owls can't actually move their eyes in their sockets at all. Instead, they turn their heads, rotating up to 270 degrees in either direction, seeing the world in slow, deliberate sweeps. There's no rushing, no frantic searching, just smooth, patient observation. She can hear a mouse moving beneath a foot of snow from 60 feet away, but she doesn't react immediately. She waits. She listens. She knows that the right moment will come. Below her, the forest floor is beginning to glow. If we kneel down close, very close, we might see them, tiny pinpricks of bioluminescent fungi, ghost mushrooms releasing their soft green light into the darkness. They've been doing this for millions of years, though scientists still aren't entirely sure why. Perhaps to attract insects that will spread their spores, or perhaps, just because they can. Not everything in nature needs a reason. Sometimes beauty exists simply to exist, glowing quietly where no one may ever see it. Let's follow a stream now, its water moving over stones worn smooth by thousands of years of patient flow. This water you're hearing has been on an incredible journey. Every drop of water on Earth has been here for billions of years, cycling endlessly. The water flowing past you now might once have been drunk by dinosaurs, might have floated in clouds above ancient oceans, might have been frozen in glaciers for 10,000 years. It remembers nothing, carries no burden from its past, simply continues flowing, always fresh, always new, always returning home to the sea before rising again to the sky. And there, at the stream's edge, can you see them? Fireflies are beginning to dance, each one flashing in its own rhythm at first. But watch what happens. Slowly, gradually, they begin to synchronize, thousands of them pulsing together in perfect harmony. No leader tells them when to flash, no conductor guides them, they simply sense each other and adjust, one tiny change at a time, until the whole forest is breathing light in unison. They remind us that harmony doesn't require force, only patience and the willingness to notice each other. The water continues on, and so do we, until we reach a place where the stream widens into a still, dark pool. The surface is glass smooth, reflecting the stars above. Beneath that surface, fish are resting in a way that seems impossible. They're sleeping while still swimming, parts of their brain shutting down while other parts remain awake, keeping them drifting gently forward. They've found a way to rest while still being in motion, to sleep while still being alive to the current. There's something comforting in that, isn't there? The knowledge that rest doesn't always mean stopping completely. At the pool's edge, a great blue heron stands on one leg, so still she could be a statue carved from twilight itself. She can stand this way for hours, perfectly balanced, perfectly patient. Her heart beats slowly, around 150 beats per minute when she's active, but dropping much lower now as she waits and rests. She doesn't fight the waiting. She doesn't wish she were somewhere else. This moment, this stillness, is enough. And so the forest teaches us again, that darkness is not empty but full, that stillness is not absence but presence, that even in the quietest moments, life continues its gentle, persistent dance. The owl watches. The mushrooms glow. The water flows. The fireflies pulse together. The fish dream while swimming. The heron stands in perfect peace. And you can simply let go, knowing that nature holds you, just as it holds everything else, in its patient, endless rhythm. The night deepens around us now, and we find ourselves walking toward the edge of the forest, where the trees give way to an open meadow bathed in moonlight. The grass here is silver blue in the darkness, and each blade bends gently under the weight of evening dew. This dew, let's pause here and consider it for a moment. Each tiny droplet forms in the coolness of night, condensing from the air itself, appearing like magic on every surface. By dawn, A single acre of meadow can hold over 2,000 gallons of dew, enough water to sustain the plants and insects through the day ahead. It arrives without rain, without rivers, simply gathering from the breath of the earth itself, a gift that appears each night and vanishes each morning, as reliable as the turning of the world. As we walk through the meadow, our footsteps disturb something wonderful, a rabbit, sitting perfectly still in the tall grass. She doesn't run immediately, instead she freezes, knowing that stillness is often the greatest protection. Her nose twitches exactly, testing the air. A rabbit's nose can wiggle up to 120 times per minute when she's investigating something, but when she's calm, truly calm, it slows to barely 20 movements. Right now, we can see her relaxing, her nose gradually quieting as she realizes we mean no harm. She melts back into her resting rhythm, her whole body releasing tension we didn't even know she was holding. Above us, the moon is nearly full, pulling at the earth with invisible threads of gravity. This same pull that creates the ocean's tides also affects the land itself. The ground beneath your feet actually rises and falls by about 16 inches twice a day, breathing with the moon's rhythm. You can't feel it happening, this gentle swelling and subsiding of the earth, but it's there nonetheless, a reminder that even stone and soil are fluid over time, that everything yields to forces greater than itself. We continue across the meadow until we reach a small rise, and from here we can see for miles. In the distance, a lake reflects the stars like a mirror. On its far shore, a beaver has been at work, and here's something extraordinary. Beaver dams can last for centuries, passed down through generations of beaver families. But what's even more remarkable is what happens because of them. When a beaver builds a dam, she creates wetlands that can support up to 85% more wildlife than the stream alone. Without intending to, without planning it, she becomes an architect of abundance, her simple, patient work creating homes for hundreds of species. She just does what beavers do, and the world becomes richer for it. Closer now, at the edge of the lake, we find cattails swaying in the gentlest breeze. These plants are extraordinary survivors, their seeds can remain viable for over 100 years, waiting in the mud until conditions are just right to grow. There's no urgency, no anxiety. They simply wait, sometimes for a human lifetime or more, until their moment arrives. And when it does, they grow without hesitation, without doubt, because they've been ready all along. The breeze picks up slightly, carrying with it the scent of water and earth, and we notice something moving across the lake's surface. A small flock of geese glides past, their V-formation perfect even in darkness. They fly this way because each bird creates an updraft for the one behind it, and by sharing the work of leading, they can fly 71% farther than any single goose could alone. When the leader tires, she simply drops back and another takes her place, seamlessly, without discussion. They've learned what humans so often forget, that taking turns, that allowing ourselves to rest and be carried by others, makes every journey possible. The night air is cool now, perfect for sleeping, and the lake before us is so still that it's hard to tell where the water ends and the sky begins. Everything is reflection, everything is doubled, everything is held in perfect balance. And here, in this meadow under the moon, surrounded by patient dew and resting rabbits, by ancient beaver dams and waiting seeds, by geese who know how to share the burden of flight, here, you can feel it, can't you? The earth's gentle rising and falling, the slow pulse of nature's heartbeat, the ancient rhythm that says, "Rest now, all is well," the night will hold you safely until morning comes. We turn now from the lake, following a gentle path that leads us toward the ocean. Can you hear it? Even from miles away, there's something in the air that changes, a freshness, a vastness, a whisper of salt and endless horizons. As we walk, the landscape shifts beneath our feet. The soil becomes sandier, and small dunes begin to rise around us like waves frozen in time. These dunes are ancient storytellers, shaped by wind over countless years, each grain of sand a tiny crystal that has traveled an extraordinary distance. A single grain of sand might have once been part of a mountain, broken down over millions of years, carried by rivers to the sea, tumbled smooth by waves, and finally deposited here. Some of the sand beneath your feet is older than the dinosaurs, patient and unchanging, content to be exactly where it is, exactly what it is. Between the dunes, beach grass grows in soft clumps, bending and swaying in the constant breeze. This grass has roots that can extend 20 feet down into the sand, seeking water and stability in an ever-shifting world. But here's what's beautiful: the grass doesn't fight the wind. It yields completely, bending nearly horizontal in the strongest gusts, then rising again when the wind passes. It's survived here for thousands of years, not through rigidity, but through the wisdom of yielding, of bending without breaking, of knowing that resistance isn't always strength. We crest the final dune, and there it is, the ocean, vast and dark and gleaming under the stars. The waves roll in with a rhythm so steady, so ancient, that your own breathing naturally begins to match its pace. In, out. Rise, fall. The ocean has been breathing this way for billions of years, and it will continue long after we're gone. Let's walk down to the water's edge, where the waves gently kiss the shore. Each wave that reaches your feet has traveled across hundreds or even thousands of miles of open ocean. Some waves are born from storms in distant hemispheres, carrying energy across the entire planet, only to spend themselves here, in this quiet moment, touching the sand with unexpected gentleness after such a long journey. There's something profound in that, the way even the most powerful forces eventually find their rest. Look now at the tide pools forming in the rocks nearby. The tide is going out, revealing small worlds that were hidden just hours ago. In one pool, a sea anemone waves its tentacles slowly in the water, looking almost like an underwater flower. But here's something wonderful: sea anemones can live for over 60 years, some even reaching 80 or 90. They spend their entire lives in one spot, attached to a single rock, and yet they never seem restless, never seem to wish they were somewhere else. They simply exist, swaying with the current, feeding when food arrives, resting when it doesn't, content in their small corner of the vast ocean. In another pool, a starfish rests against the rocks, and if you look closely at her, you'll notice something magical. Starfish don't have brains, no central nervous system telling them what to think or worry about. Instead, each of their 5 arms has its own simple nerve center, and together they move in gentle coordination. She experiences the world not through thought, but through pure sensation, through the simple contact of water and rock and sand. There's no anxiety about tomorrow, no regret about yesterday, just this moment, this pool, this rock, this perfect now. The ocean continues its eternal rhythm beside us, and if we stay very quiet, we might hear something else, the sound of sand singing. On certain beaches, when conditions are just right, the sand grains rub together as waves recede and create a soft humming sound, almost musical. Scientists call it singing sand, and it happens when the grains are perfectly round and perfectly sized, vibrating together in harmony. The beach is literally singing itself to sleep, a lullaby older than any human song. Further down the shore, we can see the soft blue-green glow of bioluminescent plankton in the waves. Each time the water moves, millions of tiny organisms light up, startled into brilliance. They're so small, so individually insignificant, and yet together they turn the ocean into liquid starlight. Each one shines for just a moment, a brief, beautiful flash, then returns to darkness, unburdened by the need to shine constantly, knowing that their small light is enough. And so the ocean teaches us that journeys end in gentleness, that staying in one place can be a full life, that we don't need brains to know peace, that even sand can sing, and that the smallest lights, shining together, can illuminate the darkness. The waves continue their ancient song. In, out, rise, fall. And you, standing here at the edge of everything, can let that rhythm carry you deeper into rest, knowing that the ocean will keep breathing long after you've drifted off to sleep. We leave the ocean now, its song still echoing in our ears, and follow a winding coastal path that leads us upward, toward the cliffs. The air grows cooler as we climb, and the sound of the waves becomes softer, more distant, like a memory of comfort we carry with us. At the top of the cliff, we find ourselves in a landscape of smooth stone and hardy plants that cling to crevices in the rock. Lichens cover the stone in patches of gray-green and pale orange, creating patterns like abstract paintings left by time itself. These lichens are remarkable beings, not one organism but two, a fungus and an algae living together in such perfect partnership that they become something new entirely. They're among the oldest living things on Earth, with some specimens over 9,000 years old, growing so slowly that they might expand less than a millimeter per year. They don't rush. They don't compete for space aggressively. They simply persist, patient beyond measure, covering the rocks in their quiet, ancient colors. The wind-up here is steady and cool, and it carries on it the calls of seabirds returning to their nests. Albatrosses soar overhead, and here's something almost impossible to believe. These birds can fly for thousands of miles without flapping their wings even once. They've mastered the art of gliding on air currents so completely that they can circumnavigate the entire globe, riding the wind in vast circles, expending almost no energy at all. An albatross can sleep while flying, shutting down half of its brain at a time, one eye closed, drifting on the wind in a state between waking and dreaming. They've found a way to rest even in motion, to trust the air to hold them. We settle ourselves on the cliff top, looking out over the darkened landscape, and notice something extraordinary in the sky. The stars are brighter here, away from any human lights, and if we watch carefully, we might see a shooting star trace its brief path across the heavens. But here's what's wonderful: what we call a shooting star is usually no bigger than a grain of sand, sometimes just a tiny speck of dust from an ancient comet. Something so small, burning up in the atmosphere, creates that brilliant streak of light. It reminds us that size and significance aren't the same thing, that even the smallest things can create moments of breathtaking beauty. As our eyes adjust to the darkness, we notice movement below on the hillside. A fox picks her way delicately between the rocks, her russet fur silvered by starlight. Foxes are creatures of both day and night, active in the quiet hours when the world transitions between states. She uses the Earth's magnetic field to hunt, able to sense it like an invisible map laid over the landscape. When she pounces on prey hidden beneath snow, she's aligning herself with magnetic north, using the planet itself as her guide. She's connected to forces we can barely detect, living in harmony with invisible threads that run through everything. Near a sheltered spot among the rocks, we find a small garden of stone. Not a garden planted by human hands, but one created by time and weather, a collection of smooth pebbles, each one a different color, sorted by the wind and rain into natural arrangements. Some of these stones have been here for millions of years, slowly weathering from sharp fragments into these perfectly smooth, palm-sized ovals. They don't resist the process of being worn down, they simply accept it, becoming softer, gentler, more beautiful with each passing century. There's wisdom in that transformation, in the way hardness slowly becomes smoothness, in the way rough edges eventually disappear. The night is deepest now, the hour when even the nocturnal creatures begin to think of rest. In the grasses nearby, crickets are still singing, but their song has slowed, the pauses between chirps growing longer. Here's something lovely, you can tell the temperature by counting cricket chirps. They slow down as the air cools, their metabolism gently declining with the night, their song becoming a slower lullaby as they too prepare for rest. Everything is winding down together, finding its own pace in the cooling darkness. And there, just beyond the cliff's edge, suspended between earth and sky, a spider has woven her web. We can see it only because of the dewdrops caught in its threads, each one a tiny prism reflecting starlight. She built this in darkness, relying entirely on touch and instinct, creating something geometrically perfect without ever seeing it. The web is strong enough to catch her prey, yet delicate enough to tremble in the slightest breeze. She's created exactly what she needs, no more, no less, and now she rests at its center, waiting with infinite patience for whatever the night might bring. So here we are, on this cliff top under the stars, surrounded by ancient lichens and soaring albatrosses, by shooting stars made of dust and foxes guided by magnetism, by stones worn smooth and crickets slowing their songs, by spider webs jeweled with dew and invisible to the naked eye until the light finds them just right. The wind continues its steady breath across the headland. The ocean murmurs far below. And you can rest now, held by the earth, watched over by the stars, part of this ancient pattern of waking and sleeping, of movement and stillness, of light and darkness flowing endlessly into each other. We descend now from the cliff top, following a path that winds through tall grasses toward a valley below. The landscape softens around us, and the air grows warmer, more sheltered. In the distance, we can see the dark silhouettes of mountains rising against the star-filled sky, their peaks touching the heavens. As we walk through the valley, we enter a field of wildflowers, their colors muted to shades of blue and silver in the moonlight. These flowers have closed their petals for the night, folding inward like hands pressed together in prayer. This isn't just a poetic image, it's a real phenomenon called nyctinasty, the circadian rhythm of plants. They close at dusk and open at dawn, following an internal clock so precise that they'll continue this rhythm even if kept in constant darkness. They know when to rest without needing to see the sun, trusting in ancient wisdom written into every cell. The flowers are sleeping now, just as you soon will be, following the same cosmic rhythm that guides all living things. We brush past lavender growing wild at the field's edge, and its scent rises gently into the night air. Lavender releases its fragrance most strongly in the evening, when the air is cool and still. For thousands of years, humans have known that this scent brings calm, slowing heart rate and deepening breath. But here's something beautiful: the plant doesn't create this scent for us. It does so to protect itself from being eaten, to communicate with other plants, to live its own quiet life. And yet, almost as a gift, its self-protection becomes our peace. Nature is full of such accidental kindnesses. The path leads us beside a small creek, its water barely visible but clearly audible, bubbling over stones in the darkness. If we kneel down and look closely, we might see caddisfly larvae in the shallow water, each one nestled inside a tiny case it built for itself from grains of sand, bits of leaf, or small pebbles. These cases are architectural marvels, each one unique, constructed with silk the larvae produce themselves. The creature inside will spend months in this protective home, slowly growing, slowly changing, safe inside its handmade shelter. It doesn't worry about the current or what might come. It simply rests in the home it built, trusting the creek to flow around it. Higher up the valley slopes, we can see the shapes of trees again, not the dense forest we left behind, but scattered pines standing like sentries in the darkness. Pine trees have their own remarkable way of resting. In winter, or during times of drought, they can slow their metabolism to almost nothing, entering a state of dormancy so deep it's almost like suspended animation. Their sap thickens, their cells fill with natural antifreeze, and they wait, sometimes for months, until conditions improve. They don't fight against the hardship. They simply withdraw into themselves, conserving what they have, knowing that life will return when the time is right. Between the pines, the ground is soft with fallen needles, and the air carries that clean, resinous scent that seems to clear the mind. There's a reason that smell is so calming. Pine releases compounds called phytoncides, airborne chemicals that trees use to protect themselves from insects and disease. When we breathe them in, our bodies respond by lowering cortisol levels, reducing stress, slowing our racing thoughts. The trees are literally healing the air around them, and we benefit simply by being near. We find a smooth boulder to rest against, still warm from the day's sun, and settle into its embrace. The stone beneath us is ancient beyond imagining, perhaps hundreds of millions of years old, formed deep in the earth's crust and slowly pushed upward by forces that built these mountains. This boulder has witnessed the rise and fall of countless species, the shifting of continents, the dance of ice ages coming and going. And yet it's still here, solid and patient, offering its warmth to anyone who pauses to rest against it. There's something deeply comforting in that permanence, in knowing that some things endure. Above us, bats begin to emerge, fluttering across the darkening sky in erratic, joyful patterns. Their flight looks chaotic, but it's actually extraordinarily precise. They navigate using echolocation, sending out sounds and listening to the echoes, building a sound picture of the world around them. A single bat can catch up to 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour, but here's what's remarkable: they don't hunt frantically. Between catches, they glide and rest their wings, conserving energy, never working harder than necessary. They've learned the rhythm of effort and ease, of action and recovery, of doing just enough and no more. The valley is settling into its deepest quiet now, that profound stillness that comes in the hours before dawn, when even the most restless creatures have found their rest. The flowers sleep with folded petals. The caddisfly larvae rest in their handmade homes. The pines stand in patient dormancy. The ancient boulder radiates its stored warmth. The bats glide between moments of effort. And here, in this gentle valley, surrounded by sleeping flowers and ancient stone, by healing pine-scented air and creatures who know the wisdom of rest, you too can feel yourself settling deeper, your breath matching the slow rhythm of the night, your body grateful for stillness, your mind finally quiet. The valley holds you. The night holds you. And all is well. We rise slowly from our resting place and continue deeper into the valley, where the landscape opens into a wide, flat expanse. Here, the ground is different, softer, slightly yielding beneath our feet. We've entered a wetland, a place between water and earth, neither one nor the other, but something in between. The moon reflects in countless small pools scattered across the marsh, creating a field of silver mirrors. Cattails and reeds stand silent in the still water, and there's a quality to the air here, thick, rich, alive with the scent of growing things. Wetlands are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth, supporting more life per acre than almost anywhere else. But they don't shout their importance. They simply exist quietly, filtering water, storing floods, providing homes for thousands of species, doing their essential work without fanfare, without demanding recognition. At the edge of one pool, a great egret stands motionless, her white feathers luminous in the moonlight. She's been standing this way for so long she seems part of the landscape itself, a living statue. Egrets can remain perfectly still for over 20 minutes at a time, waiting for fish to swim within reach. But this isn't tense waiting, filled with anxiety or impatience. It's a kind of active meditation, a complete presence in the moment that has no room for restlessness. She teaches us that waiting doesn't have to feel like suffering, it can simply be another form of being. Beneath the water's surface, barely visible, freshwater mussels rest half buried in the mud. These creatures are among nature's most patient beings. Some species can live for over 100 years, filtering water day after day, year after year, century after century. A single mussel can filter up to 15 gallons of water per day, removing impurities, making the water cleaner for everything else that lives here. They never rest from this work, and yet it requires no effort from them, it's simply what they are, what they do by existing. Their entire life is an act of purification, performed without intention, without self-consciousness, without pride. As we move carefully along the marsh edge, we hear a sound, low, resonant, almost like a song. It's a bullfrog, his deep call echoing across the water. Male bullfrogs call to attract mates, but they do so with extraordinary efficiency. They can call continuously for hours without tiring because they've evolved a special breathing pattern that lets them vocalize while both inhaling and exhaling. There's no pause, no gap, just one continuous song flowing out into the night. It's a reminder that some things can continue indefinitely when we find the right rhythm, when we learn to work with our nature rather than against it. In the shallows, we notice movement, a salamander, her skin dark and glistening, moving with slow deliberation through the water. Salamanders are creatures of remarkable regeneration. If they lose a limb, they can grow it back completely, bones, muscles, nerves, everything. They can even regenerate portions of their heart, their spinal cord, parts of their brain. They carry within them the ability to heal completely from what would be permanent damage to most creatures. They don't hurry the process, don't force it. The healing simply happens, in its own time, as natural as breathing. Above the marsh, fireflies continue their gentle dance, though fewer now as the night deepens. But there's something we didn't notice before, the females don't fly. They remain on the ground or in the grass, flashing their own lights in response to the males flying above. It's a conversation in light, question and answer, back and forth across the darkness. And here's what's tender about it: the male's flash lasts only about half a second, but the female waits 2 full seconds before responding. She takes her time. She doesn't rush. Even in courtship, even in the urgency of reproduction, nature builds and pauses, moments of consideration, space between the asking and the answering. The marsh grass whispers around us, and we notice how it grows, not in straight lines but in gentle curves, following the flow of water that comes and goes with the seasons. Marsh grasses can survive being completely submerged for months during floods, then completely dry during droughts. They bend to whatever conditions arrive, their roots holding firm while their blades yield to circumstance. They're neither rigid nor rootless, but perfectly balanced between strength and flexibility, between holding on and letting go. In a drier patch of ground, we find a turtle, old and unhurried, making her way slowly toward a resting spot for the night. Turtles carry their homes with them always, never separated from shelter, never far from safety. Some species can live for over 150 years, and they grow more slowly as they age, their metabolism gradually declining, their movements becoming more deliberate, their whole existence settling into an ever deeper calm. They teach us that slowing down isn't decline, it's simply a different way of being, equally valid, equally beautiful. The wetland breathes around us, water and earth and air all flowing into each other, all supporting each other, all part of one living system. The egret stands in her patient stillness. The mussels filter their endless gallons. The bullfrog sings his continuous song. The salamander carries her power of healing. The fireflies pause between their flashes of light. The grass bends with whatever comes. The turtle moves slowly toward her rest. And you, passing through this place between water and land, between waking and sleeping, can feel yourself becoming part of this same patient rhythm, this same gentle yielding, this same trust that everything necessary is already here, already happening, already holding you safe. We leave the wetland now, our feet finding firmer ground as we follow a path that leads us into rolling hills covered in soft grasses. The landscape here is open and gentle, rising and falling like the breath of some enormous sleeping creature. The wind moves freely across these hills, carrying with it the scent of sage and wild thyme. As we walk, we notice the grasses themselves, how they move together in waves, responding to every shift in the breeze. These are prairie grasses, and beneath the surface they're performing a quiet miracle. Their roots extend down into the earth, sometimes reaching depths of 15 feet or more, far deeper than the visible plant above. These deep roots are storing carbon, holding soil in place, creating pathways for water to travel deep into the aquifer. The part we see, swaying gently above ground, is only a fraction of what the plant truly is. So much of its life, so much of its work, happens in darkness, unseen, unwitnessed, but absolutely essential. It reminds us that our visible accomplishments are only part of our story, that the quiet, invisible work we do matters just as much. Among the grasses, we spot a small burrow entrance, and if we watch carefully, we might see the nose of a ground squirrel emerge, whiskers twitching as she tests the air. Ground squirrels are masters of rest in its most extreme form. During hibernation, their body temperature can drop to just above freezing, their heart rate slows from 200 beats per minute to as few as 5, and they breathe only once or twice per minute. They enter a state so deep it seems almost like death, yet they're perfectly safe, perfectly preserved, their bodies knowing exactly how to shut down and exactly when to wake up again. They surrender completely to rest, trusting their biology with absolute faith. The path leads us higher now, toward an outcropping of rock where we can see for miles in every direction. Up here, the wind is stronger, and clinging to the rocks we find cushions of moss campion, a plant that grows in some of the harshest environments on Earth. It forms these perfect dome shapes, protecting itself from wind and cold. Some moss campion plants are over 300 years old, growing so slowly that they add only a millimeter or two of growth each year. 3 centuries of life, contained in a cushion no bigger than a dinner plate. They've learned that survival isn't about growing fast or growing large, it's about endurance, about adapting perfectly to your circumstances, about being exactly what you need to be and nothing more. As we rest on the rocks, we look up at the sky, where the stars seem impossibly bright and close. Up here, away from everything, we can see the Milky Way stretching across the heavens like a river of light. Every star we can see is part of our own galaxy, and here's something that defies imagination. The light from some of those stars has been traveling for thousands of years to reach our eyes. When we look at them, we're literally seeing into the past. Some of those stars may no longer exist, yet their light continues its patient journey through space, arriving here, now, to this moment, to your upturned face. Time and distance collapse into this single peaceful instant. A moth flutters past, drawn perhaps by the pale color of the rocks in the moonlight. Moths are often thought of as clumsy or confused, but they're actually navigating by celestial light, using the moon and stars to orient themselves. Before human lights existed, this system worked perfectly. The moth doesn't know that our artificial lights confuse her ancient navigation system. She's simply following instructions written into her being millions of years ago, trusting a guidance system older than mountains. There's something poignant in that unwavering trust, that commitment to the path even when the world has changed. Near the rocks, we discover a patch of evening primrose, their pale yellow flowers still open despite the late hour. These flowers bloom in the evening and remain open through the night, closing only when the sun rises. They've chosen to live on a different schedule than most plants, finding their pollinators among the creatures of darkness, moths and night-flying beetles. They remind us that there's no single right time to bloom, no single right way to live. Some of us are built for daylight, some for darkness, and both are equally valid, equally beautiful. The wind continues its steady flow across the hilltop, and we can hear it moving through the grasses below like water flowing through a stream. Wind is simply air moving from areas of high pressure to low pressure, seeking equilibrium, trying to balance itself. Everything in nature seeks balance, temperature equalizing, water finding its level, pressure distributing itself evenly. The universe itself is constantly working toward harmony, and we're part of that movement, part of that endless seeking of peace and balance. In a sheltered spot among the rocks, we find a cluster of hen and chicks plants, their succulent leaves arranged in perfect rosettes. These plants can survive for months without water, storing what they need in their thick leaves, sipping from their reserves when necessary. They've learned not to depend on abundance, not to panic in scarcity, but to trust in their own reserves, their own inner resources. They know they have enough. They know they are enough. So here we rest, high on this hill under rivers of ancient starlight, surrounded by grasses with roots reaching deep into darkness, by squirrels who trust completely in the deepest rest, by plants that have endured for centuries through patience, by moths following ancient celestial maps, by flowers that bloom in their own time, by winds seeking balance, by succulents trusting their inner abundance. The night holds all of this without effort, without strain. The earth turns. The stars shine. The wind flows. Everything seeking rest, seeking balance, seeking home. And you are part of this, woven into this same pattern, held by the same night, guided by the same ancient rhythms toward the same peaceful destination. We descend from the hilltop now, moving into a landscape of gentle slopes and scattered boulders. The air grows cooler as we enter a small canyon, its walls rising on either side of us like protective arms. Here, the world narrows and deepens, becoming more intimate, more sheltered. The canyon walls are streaked with mineral deposits, ribbons of rust-red iron, pale bands of limestone, dark veins of manganese, each layer a chapter in the Earth's long story. These rocks have been here for millions of years, slowly revealing themselves as wind and water gently wear them away. But here's what's remarkable: the wearing away isn't destruction, it's revelation. The canyon becomes more beautiful, more intricate, more itself with every passing century. Sometimes what looks like loss is actually the uncovering of something that was always there, waiting to be seen. As we walk deeper into the canyon, we notice the temperature dropping further. The stone walls have released the day's heat back to the sky, and now they're cool to the touch. Stone is an excellent regulator of temperature, absorbing warmth slowly and releasing it slowly, never sudden, never extreme. It teaches the wisdom of gradual change, of slow transitions, of allowing things to shift in their own time without forcing or rushing. In a crack in the canyon wall, a small fern grows, impossibly green in this dry place. Ferns are ancient beyond imagining. They existed before flowering plants, before dinosaurs, even before trees. They've been on Earth for over 360 million years, and their basic design has barely changed. They found a form that works and simply continued it, generation after generation, content with what they are, needing no improvement, no evolution towards something else. They remind us that sometimes perfection is simply being wholly yourself, unchanged and unapologetic. We follow the canyon floor until we find what we were seeking, a small spring emerging from the rock face, trickling down into a clear pool below. This water has been traveling through underground aquifers for years, perhaps decades, filtering through layers of stone, emerging here pure and cold and sweet. Groundwater moves incredibly slowly, sometimes only a few feet per year, taking what might be a human lifetime to travel a single mile. But it doesn't hurry. It knows that the slow journey makes it clean, makes it perfect, makes it exactly what it needs to be when it finally emerges into the light. At the pool's edge, we see tracks in the damp sand, the delicate prints of a ringtail, a small mammal rarely seen but often present. Ringtails are solitary creatures, each one maintaining its own territory, hunting alone, resting alone in rocky crevices during the day. But they're not lonely in their solitude. They're complete in themselves, needing no constant companionship to feel whole. They move through their lives with quiet confidence, comfortable in their own company, finding sufficiency in their solitary existence. There's peace in that self-containment, that ability to be alone without being lonely. Above the spring, clinging to the canyon wall, we notice a swallow's nest made entirely of mud. The bird collected thousands of tiny beakfuls of wet clay and assembled them, one after another, into this perfect cup. The work took weeks, required countless trips, but the swallow didn't complain about the labor or wish for an easier way. She simply did what needed doing, one small action at a time, until the impossible became actual. The nest remains here now, empty for the season, a testament to what patience and persistence can build. As we rest by the pool, we notice how the sound of the trickling water fills the entire canyon, echoing off the walls, becoming amplified and multiplied. A single small spring creates a symphony in this enclosed space. It's a reminder that our actions, our presence, our small contributions can resonate far beyond what we imagine, touching spaces and lives we may never know about, creating ripples that spread in ways we cannot trace. The canyon is darker than the open hills we left behind, but there's comfort in this enclosed darkness, this sense of being held on all sides. In a small alcove, protected from wind and rain, we find ancient pictographs, handprints left by people thousands of years ago, red ochre still visible on the stone. They were here, in this exact spot, looking at these same walls, listening to this same spring. They placed their hands on this stone and left a mark that says simply, "I was here. I existed. I mattered." The stone has remembered them faithfully all these centuries, holding their presence in its patient, mineral memory. Near the pictographs, a night-blooming Sirius cactus clings to a crevice, its enormous white flower fully open in the darkness. This flower will bloom for only one night, just one night in an entire year, and by morning it will wilt and never open again. The plant puts enormous energy into creating this single, spectacular blossom, and then lets it go without hesitation when its brief time is done. There's no clinging, no attempt to make the beauty last longer than it should. The cactus understands what we so often forget, that brevity doesn't diminish beauty, and that letting go is part of the natural rhythm of all things. The spring continues its steady trickle, and we can feel the coolness rising from the pool, mixing with the warmer air above. In the darkness of the canyon, surrounded by ancient stone and ancient handprints, by solitary ringtails and patient ferns, by mud nests built one beakful at a time and flowers that bloom for only one perfect night, we can feel ourselves settling even deeper into the quiet. The stone remembers everything and forgets nothing. The water flows without ceasing. The canyon holds all who enter it with the same unchanging embrace. And here, held by stone and water and ancient presence, you can rest completely, knowing you are part of this long, long story, this patient unfolding, this gentle revelation of what has always been true. We emerge from the canyon into a landscape transformed. While we walk through stone and shadow, the night has deepened into its most profound hour, that time just before dawn when darkness reaches its fullest expression, when the world seems to hold its breath in anticipation of light that hasn't yet arrived. Before us stretches a desert, vast and open under a sky crowded with stars. The sand glows faintly in the starlight, and the air is perfectly still, perfectly clear. In the desert, there are no barriers between you and the sky, no trees to interrupt the view, no hills to block the horizon. Here, you can see forever, or at least it feels that way. We walk across the cooling sand, and each step creates a soft whisper. Desert sand is an extraordinary timekeeper. Each grain has been worn smooth by thousands of years of wind, tumbling against other grains in an endless, gentle polishing. Some of this sand was once part of mountains that no longer exist, ground down over eons into these tiny fragments. The desert teaches us that even the mightiest things eventually become soft, that time transforms everything, and that there's a kind of beauty in being worn smooth by the journey. In the distance, we can see the silhouette of a saguaro cactus, arms raised to the sky like a greeting or a blessing. These cacti grow incredibly slowly. It can take 75 years for a saguaro to grow its first arm, and some live for over 200 years. Inside their thick skin, they store hundreds of gallons of water, reserves built up slowly during rare rains, rationed carefully through long months of drought. They've mastered the art of holding what they need without hoarding, of using their resources wisely without anxiety, of trusting that more will come when it's meant to come. Right now, in the cool of night, the saguaro's pores are open, breathing in carbon dioxide, preparing for tomorrow's photosynthesis. Even in darkness, even in apparent rest, it's quietly preparing, quietly gathering what it needs. As we draw closer, we notice holes in the cactus, small caves carved out by woodpeckers and later used by tiny elf owls. These owls are no bigger than a sparrow, the smallest owls in the world, and they've found perfect homes in the cool interior of the cactus. The saguaro doesn't resist these intrusions. Instead, it forms a callus around each hole, creating a smooth, protective chamber. What began as a wound becomes a home. The cactus teaches us that sometimes what hurts us can be transformed into shelter for others, that our vulnerabilities can become our gifts. We continue across the desert floor and find a patch of ghost flowers, their white petals luminous in the starlight. These flowers have no chlorophyll, cannot photosynthesize, cannot make their own food. Instead, they connect to fungi underground, which connect to the roots of trees, and through this invisible network they receive everything they need to live. They survive entirely through connection, through relationship, through being part of a web they didn't create but trust completely. They bloom without apology, pure white and beautiful, sustained by invisible threads of mutual support. The sand beneath our feet is still releasing the day's warmth, creating gentle currents of rising air. A sidewinder snake has left its distinctive tracks in the sand, parallel J-shaped curves showing where it moved during the cooling evening. Sidewinders don't slither straight like other snakes, they move sideways, lifting portions of their body off the hot sand, touching down in a rolling motion that minimizes contact with the burning surface. They've adapted their entire method of movement to survive in a harsh environment, finding an elegant solution to what could have been an impossible problem. They remind us that there's more than one way to move through the world, that unconventional approaches are sometimes the most effective. In the shadow of a rock, we find a kangaroo rat, her enormous eyes reflecting the starlight. These tiny creatures never drink water, not once in their entire lives. They extract all the moisture they need from the seeds they eat, and their bodies are so efficient that they lose almost no water to respiration or waste. They've evolved to thrive in a place that seems to offer nothing, finding abundance in apparent scarcity, needing far less than we might imagine to live a full and complete life. Above us, the stars continue their slow wheel across the sky, and we can see meteor after meteor streak across the darkness. We're passing through a meteor shower, though the term shower is misleading. Each light is separated from the next by minutes of patient waiting. The meteors are remnants of a comet that passed by centuries ago, leaving a trail of debris that the Earth crosses once each year like clockwork. These particles have been drifting through space for hundreds of years, and tonight, in this exact moment, they're intersecting with our planet, burning up in brief, brilliant flashes. They traveled so far, for so long, for just this one moment of light. We find a smooth piece of desert pavement, a stretch where wind has blown away all the sand, leaving behind a mosaic of small stones fitted together like tiles. This process takes thousands of years. The wind doesn't rest, but it also never forces. It simply continues, day after day, year after year, removing one grain at a time until the stones settle into this natural pattern. No human hand arranged them, yet they fit together almost perfectly. Sometimes the most beautiful order emerges not from planning but from patient, consistent forces working over time beyond our comprehension. The desert is so quiet now that we can hear our own heartbeat, our own breath. There's nothing else, no traffic, no voices, no machinery. Just the eternal silence of sand and stone and starlight. In this silence, we can feel how small we are, and paradoxically, how completely held we are by something vast and ancient and endlessly patient. The saguaro stands in its century-long vigil. The elf owls sleep in their cactus homes. The ghost flowers bloom on invisible support. The sidewinder's tracks tell the story of elegant adaptation. The kangaroo rat thrives without water. The meteors complete their centuries-long journey in a flash of light. The stones settle into their perfect mosaic. And you, standing in this ancient emptiness that is somehow full, can feel yourself becoming part of this same patience, this same trust, this same surrender to rhythms larger and slower and wiser than anything we can name. The desert asks nothing of you. It simply holds you in its vast, star-filled silence. We leave the open desert now and find ourselves approaching a different landscape, one where the air feels suddenly heavier, richer, filled with the scent of damp earth and green growing things. Before us rises the edge of a rainforest, dark and dense and alive with whispers. As we step beneath the canopy, the starlight disappears, replaced by a gentler darkness, a soft, green-filtered dimness even at night. The temperature shifts immediately, becoming warmer, more humid, like stepping into an embrace. Here, everything is different. Where the desert taught us about scarcity and patience, the rainforest speaks of abundance, of life layered upon life, of growth so persistent it seems almost eager. Our feet find soft ground, not sand or stone, but earth covered in a thick carpet of decaying leaves, centuries of growth and death composting into rich, dark soil. This forest floor is one of nature's great recyclers. A single leaf falls, and within months it's been broken down by fungi, bacteria, insects, and time, its nutrients released back into the soil to feed new growth. Nothing is wasted here. Everything that dies becomes food for what comes next. The forest has perfected the art of transformation, of turning endings into beginnings, over and over, in an endless cycle that requires no intervention, no management, only time. As our eyes adjust, we begin to see the shapes around us, massive tree trunks rising into the darkness above, their roots spreading across the forest floor like wooden rivers. These are strangler figs, and their story is one of patient persistence. They begin life high in the canopy, seeds deposited by birds in the branches of other trees. The seedling sends roots down, long, thin roots that dangle through the air until they finally reach the ground, sometimes 100 feet below. Once rooted, the fig grows stronger, its roots thickening, gradually surrounding the host tree. Eventually, centuries later, the original tree dies and decomposes, leaving the fig standing hollow in the center, a living architecture of intertwined roots. It's a reminder that some journeys require complete transformation, that what we become may look nothing like how we began. In the understory, we notice something glowing, a soft, eerie green light coming from the base of a rotting log. This is foxfire, the bioluminescence of fungi breaking down the dead wood. The light serves no purpose we fully understand. It doesn't attract prey or warn predators. The fungi simply glow because they can, because it's part of their nature, creating beauty in the dark corners of the forest where no human eye might ever witness it. They remind us that not everything needs to serve a function, that some beauty exists for its own sake, unseen and uncelebrated but no less real. Above us, though we cannot see them in the darkness, the canopy is alive with epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without harming them. Orchids, bromeliads, ferns, all clinging to branches high above, never touching the ground. They collect water in the cups of their leaves, gather nutrients from rain and falling debris, and live their entire lives in the air. Some have been growing on the same branch for decades, swaying with every wind, bending with every storm, but never letting go. They've found their place and committed to it completely, trusting that everything they need will come to them if they simply remain rooted where they are. The air is filled with the sound of water, not the crash of waves or the babble of a stream, but something softer, dripping. The rainforest never truly dries out. Water condenses on leaves, drips from branches, runs down trunks, seeps through moss. The entire forest is in a constant state of gentle weeping, releasing moisture back into the air, which rises, condenses, and falls again. It's a closed system, the forest creating its own rain, watering itself, needing nothing from outside its own boundaries. It's completely self-sustaining, a reminder that true abundance comes not from constantly seeking more, but from learning to recycle and renew what you already have. Near our feet, a column of leaf-cutter ants marches past, each carrying a piece of leaf many times its own size. They're not eating these leaves. They're taking them underground to cultivate fungus gardens, farming in darkness, tending crops we can barely see. These ants have been practicing agriculture for 50 million years, far longer than humans have existed. They know their work, each ant performing its role without question, without ambition for a different task. The colony functions because each individual does exactly what it's meant to do. No more, no less, trusting that their small contribution matters. We find a place to rest against the buttressed roots of an enormous kapok tree, its trunk so wide that 10 people holding hands couldn't encircle it. This tree might be 500 years old, maybe more. It was here before any city we know, before any road or building, watching the forest change season after season, century after century. In its lifetime, it's seen storms that would terrify us, droughts that lasted years, floods that transformed the landscape. And yet it remains, growing slowly, steadily, one ring at a time, never rushing, never trying to be anything other than exactly what it is, a tree, rooted in this spot, reaching toward light, providing shelter for countless creatures, existing in patient magnificence. The forest breathes around us, the drip of water, the rustle of unseen creatures, the soft decay of organic matter, the persistent growth of new life pushing up through the old. Everything here is connected to everything else in ways so complex that no single mind could trace all the threads. The fungus feeds the tree, which feeds the epiphyte, which provides water for the frog, which eats the insect, which pollinates the flower, which feeds the bird, which spreads the seed, which becomes the tree. Round and round, with no beginning and no end, just an eternal dance of giving and receiving, dying and being born. And here, held by this ancient tree, surrounded by the patient work of decomposition and growth, by fungi that glow for no reason, by ants that have farmed for 50 million years, by plants that live in air and trees that create their own rain, you can feel yourself relaxing into this same cycle, this same trust that everything is connected, that nothing is wasted, that your own small life is part of this larger pattern that has no need to hurry, no need to force, no need to be anything other than what it already, perfectly is. We rise from the kapok's protective roots and move deeper still into the rainforest, where the path narrows and the darkness grows more complete. The air is so thick with moisture now that breathing feels almost like drinking, and every surface we touch is soft with moss or slick with condensation. Ahead, we hear a different sound of water, not dripping but flowing. We're approaching a stream, hidden somewhere in the darkness, its voice growing louder as we draw near. When we finally reach it, the water is moving slowly, almost reluctantly, over smooth stones worn by countless years of passage. The stream is perhaps only a few feet wide, but here's something remarkable. This tiny waterway might feed into a river that eventually reaches the ocean hundreds of miles away. Every stream, no matter how small, is connected to something larger. Every trickle matters. Every drop makes its contribution to the greater whole. Nothing is too small to have meaning. We kneel beside the water and notice creatures we might have missed, freshwater shrimp, nearly transparent, moving with delicate precision across the streambed. These shrimp are cleaners, eating algae and detritus, keeping the water pure. They live their entire lives in this one small stream, never traveling more than a few dozen feet from where they were born. Their world is tiny by our standards, yet they seem completely content within it, finding everything they need in this limited space. They teach us that a small world, fully inhabited, can be more fulfilling than a large world only partially explored. Along the stream's edge, a cecropia tree leans over the water, its hollow stems home to colonies of ants. The tree provides shelter, and in return, the ants protect it from herbivores and even clear away competing vegetation from around its base. Neither could thrive as well without the other. They've been partners for so long that they've co-evolved, each shaping the other's existence. It's one of nature's perfect agreements, entered into without negotiation, without contract, simply through mutual benefit recognized and honored over millions of years. Trust, it seems, doesn't always require words. As we follow the stream, we notice the banks are lined with ferns, not the small delicate ferns of the forest floor, but tree ferns, some reaching 20 feet high, their fronds spreading like ancient green umbrellas. These are living fossils, virtually unchanged for 180 million years. They grew in forests where dinosaurs walked, and they grow here still, in exactly the same form. When change isn't necessary, nature doesn't force it. The tree ferns found their perfect expression eons ago and saw no reason to become anything different. There's wisdom in knowing when you've arrived, when striving can cease, when you can simply be what you already are. The stream widens into a still pool, and on its surface, we see the reflection of something glowing above, bioluminescent fungi growing on a fallen branch that hangs over the water. The glow reflects and doubles in the dark mirror of the pool, creating a constellation of earthbound stars. It's a small beauty, witnessed by no one but us in this moment, yet it exists with the same perfection as any celebrated wonder. The forest is full of these secret beauties, these quiet miracles that need no audience, no applause, simply existing because that's what they do. At the pool's edge, a small poison dart frog rests on a leaf, her skin bright even in the dimness, a jewel of electric blue. Despite her beauty, or perhaps because of it, she's deadly. Her skin secretes toxins powerful enough to kill much larger creatures. But she doesn't use this power aggressively. She simply exists, brightly colored, warning others to keep their distance. Her message is clear: I am beautiful, and I am dangerous, and both are true at once. She doesn't apologize for either. She doesn't hide her brightness to make others comfortable, nor does she weaponize her toxicity. She simply is what she is, completely and unapologetically. We continue along the stream until we reach a small waterfall, barely 3 feet high, where the water spills over a lip of stone into a deeper pool below. The sound is hypnotic, a steady, unchanging rush that seems to wash through our minds, clearing away thoughts like debris. Water has this effect, this ability to entrain our brainwaves, to slow our racing thoughts, to bring us into rhythm with something older and more fundamental than language. The waterfall has been falling like this for thousands of years, and it will continue long after we're gone, patient and persistent, wearing away the stones so gradually that the change is invisible, yet absolutely certain. In the mist created by the falling water, we notice something extraordinary, a rainbow, faint and colorless in the darkness, a ghost rainbow formed by moonlight rather than sun. It shimmers across the mist, there and not there, visible only from certain angles. It reminds us that beauty doesn't always need brightness to exist, that even in darkness there are prismatic wonders, subtle and easily missed but no less real for their quietness. Behind the waterfall, there's a small cave in the rock face, and we make our way carefully behind the falling curtain of water. Inside, the sound intensifies, surrounding us completely, and the air is cool and fresh. The walls are covered in liverworts, primitive plants that require almost nothing to survive, just moisture and a hint of light. They've existed on Earth for over 470 million years, among the first plants to make the transition from water to land. They witnessed the birth of forests, the rise and fall of countless species, and they remain, simple and successful, asking nothing more of the world than what the world freely gives. We settle here in this small sanctuary behind falling water, surrounded by ancient liverworts, listening to the eternal rush of the stream. The rainforest continues its slow work outside, decomposing, growing, cycling, breathing. The shrimp clean their small territories. The ants and trees maintain their ancient partnership. The tree ferns stand unchanged. The fungi glow unseen. The poison dart frog warns in beautiful silence. The waterfall continues its patient erosion. And here, in this hidden place where water falls and light bends and ancient plants cling to stone, you can feel yourself finally, completely letting go. Your breath matches the rhythm of falling water. Your thoughts dissolve in the white noise of the cascade. Your body releases into the cool stone at your back. The forest holds you. The water sings you deeper. And there is nothing left to do but rest, here in the heart of growth and decay, of life endlessly renewing itself, of patterns so old they predate memory, yet so present they fill this exact moment with perfect, peaceful meaning. Sleep now. The waterfall will keep watch. The forest will continue. And you are safe in the embrace of these ancient rhythms, these patient processes, these gentle, endless cycles that ask nothing of you but that you simply rest. We emerge from behind the waterfall, our senses cleansed by the sound and mist, and find that the forest has begun to change around us. The air is lighter now, less humid, and through gaps in the canopy above, we can see the faintest suggestion of change in the sky, not light yet, but a subtle shift in the quality of darkness, the first whisper that dawn, though still far off, is no longer impossible. The path leads us gradually upward, out of the rainforest's deepest heart and toward its edge. The trees begin to thin slightly, and we find ourselves in a zone of transition, where the forest meets something else, not abruptly, but in a gradual blending that takes miles to complete. This is the cloud forest now, where mist is a permanent resident, where moisture hangs in the air like a living thing. Everything here is draped in moss, not just the ground, but the trees, the rocks, even the leaves themselves wear coats of soft grain. The moss here can hold up to 20 times its own weight in water, acting like a sponge that releases moisture slowly back into the forest. The trees don't mind this burden. In fact, they depend on it. The moss absorbs nutrients from rain and mist, and as it grows and dies and decomposes, it feeds the branches it clings to. What looks like a parasite is actually a partner, another example of nature's preference for cooperation over competition, for mutual benefit over solitary gain. We walk carefully, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of moss beneath us. The silence here is different from the desert's silence, not empty, but full, pregnant with moisture and muted sound. In the branches above, though we cannot see them, resplendent quetzal are sleeping, their long tail feathers draping down like ribbons of emerald and gold. These birds were considered sacred by ancient civilizations, and it's easy to understand why. Their beauty seems almost impossible, almost too perfect to be real. But they are real, sleeping peacefully in the mist-wrapped trees, their brilliance hidden until morning comes. Near the path, we find a cluster of bromeliads, their rosettes of leaves forming perfect cups that hold water. These tiny pools, some no larger than a teaspoon, are complete ecosystems. Mosquito larvae live here, and tadpoles of poison dart frogs. Beetles and spiders make their homes in these miniature ponds. Each bromeliad is a world unto itself, providing everything needed for numerous creatures to complete their entire life cycles. Some tadpoles are born, grow, and transform into frogs without ever leaving the single bromeliad where their mother deposited them. An entire life, from beginning to end, contained in a space no bigger than a coffee cup. It's a reminder that vastness isn't required for completeness, that small spaces can hold whole universes. The mist around us grows thicker, and visibility drops to just a few feet in any direction. We're walking through a cloud now, literally inside it, feeling its cool touch on our skin. Clouds seem ephemeral, temporary, but the cloud forests exist in this mist almost constantly. Some trees here might experience only a few hours of direct sunlight per year. They've adapted completely to this twilight existence, learning to photosynthesize in diffused light, to thrive in conditions that would starve other plants. They prove that there's no single formula for success, that what seems like deprivation to one form of life is abundance to another. We find ourselves beside an ancient tree, its trunk thick with moss and lichen, and notice something moving on the bark, a sloth, climbing so slowly that we almost mistook her for part of the tree itself. Sloths are perhaps nature's greatest masters of doing less. They move so slowly that algae grows in their fur, camouflaging them green. Their metabolism is extraordinarily low. It can take them a month to digest a single meal. They sleep 15 to 20 hours a day, and even when awake, they barely move. Yet they've survived for millions of years through this strategy of radical slowness, of profound energy conservation. In a world that celebrates speed and productivity, the sloth reminds us that there's another way, that sometimes the most sustainable approach is simply to slow down, to do less, to rest more, to trust that enough is enough. Higher still we climb, and the forest becomes stranger, more otherworldly. Trees here are twisted and gnarled, shaped by constant wind and mist into sculptures that seem almost intentional. Some are completely horizontal, growing parallel to the ground because the wind allows no other orientation. They've surrendered to the forces around them, adapting their entire form to circumstances, and in doing so, they've created a forest unlike any other, a horizontal forest, a forest that bows perpetually to the wind but never breaks. Among these twisted trees, we find hanging lichens, long strands of gray-green that drape from every branch like ancient beards. These lichens can live for hundreds of years, growing less than a millimeter annually, filtering nutrients directly from the mist and air. They have no roots, no connection to soil, existing purely on what the air provides. They're among the most sensitive organisms to air pollution. They cannot survive where the air is tainted. Their presence here is a testimony, a living proof that this air is clean, has been clean, will remain clean. They're indicators of purity, silent witnesses to the health of this place. The path levels out onto a small ridge, and here the mist occasionally parts, giving us glimpses of the valley below, still wrapped in darkness, and the mountains beyond, their peaks just beginning to catch the first impossible hint of pre-dawn light. We're between worlds here, above the deep forest, below the highest peaks, suspended in mist and transition. A hummingbird suddenly appears before us, hovering in place despite the mist and wind. At night, hummingbirds enter a state called torpor, where their body temperature drops and their metabolism slows to a fraction of its normal rate. This allows them to survive the night without eating, without burning through their enormous energy reserves. But as dawn approaches, they begin to warm themselves internally, raising their body temperature back to normal before the sun even rises. This one is awake early, her wings beating 50 times per second, holding her perfectly still in space. She demonstrates something extraordinary, that immense effort can create the appearance of perfect stillness, that sometimes the hardest work is required just to stay in one place, and that there's nobility in that kind of persistence. So here we rest, in the cloud forest, surrounded by moss that holds water and feeds trees, by bromeliad worlds and patient sloths, by trees that bow to wind and lichens that testify to purity, by hummingbirds that work impossibly hard to hover in perfect peace. The mist swirls around us. The dawn is coming, slowly, inevitably. And you, wrapped in this cloud, held by this in-between place, can feel yourself drifting deeper still into rest, knowing that transformation is always happening, that transitions are natural, that the space between darkness and light is not emptiness but fullness, rich with mist and moss and the quiet breathing of sleeping birds. We leave the cloud forest behind now, following the ridge as it climbs higher still. The air grows thinner, crisper, and the mist begins to fall away below us like a receding tide. We're ascending into alpine territory, where trees become scarce and the landscape opens into something stark and beautiful. The vegetation changes with each step upward. The trees grow smaller, more twisted, their trunks thick but their heights stunted by altitude and wind. These are crumholes, wind timber, trees that grow only as high as the winter snowpack protects them. Above that line, the wind is too harsh, the cold too severe. So they grow outward instead of upward, spreading horizontally, entire forests barely waist high. They've redefined success, finding another way to be trees, to exist as trees, without needing to touch the sky. They remind us that our definition of growth doesn't have to match anyone else's, that spreading outward can be just as valid as reaching upward. Soon even these give way to meadows of alpine grasses and wildflowers, though at this hour, in this season, many have already gone to seed. The growing season here lasts perhaps only 8 weeks, 8 brief weeks of warmth between long months of snow and ice. The plants here have learned to do everything quickly when their moment arrives: sprout, grow, flower, produce seeds, all in a fraction of the time their lowland cousins enjoy. But now, in the quiet time between seasons, they rest deeply, their seeds protected in the soil, waiting patiently for the warmth that will eventually, inevitably return. They trust in cycles, in the reliability of seasons, in the promise that winter always yields to spring, even if spring seems impossibly far away. We climb higher, and the meadow gives way to scree, loose rocks scattered across the slope like broken pieces of the mountain itself. Walking here requires care and attention, each stone might shift beneath our feet. But among these rocks, we find pikas, small round mammals who live their entire lives in this seemingly inhospitable place. Pikas don't hibernate. Instead, they spend the brief summer months gathering vegetation, drying it in the sun, and storing it in hay piles beneath the rocks, enough food to last through the long winter when nothing grows. They work tirelessly during the warm months, but it's not frantic work. It's purposeful, methodical, storing abundance against scarcity, planning for a future they can't see but know will come. They embody the wisdom of preparation without anxiety, of working hard while the sun shines so they can rest peacefully when darkness falls. As we continue climbing, the sky begins to lighten almost imperceptibly. Not sunrise yet, that's still some time away, but the absolute darkness is softening into deep blue, the color of the hour before dawn. This is the time of greatest quiet, when even the earliest risers are still sleeping, when the nocturnal creatures have finished their work but the diurnal ones haven't yet begun. It's a pocket of pure stillness, a pause between breaths. We reach a large boulder field, and here we must slow down, carefully picking our way between massive stones. These boulders were carried here by glaciers thousands of years ago, deposited when the ice finally melted and retreated. They've been sitting here ever since, patient and unmoved, gradually weathering, gradually eroding, but so slowly that the changes are invisible across human lifetimes. On their surfaces, we can see more lichens, bright orange and yellow patches that look almost painted on. These are some of the slowest growing organisms on Earth. Some of the patches we see might be 4,000 years old, growing outward at a rate so slow it challenges comprehension, perhaps 1 centimeter every 100 years. They were here when ancient civilizations were building their first cities, and they'll be here long after those cities have crumbled to dust. They're a meditation on deep time, on patience that spans millennia, on existence that measures itself not in years but in eons. Between the boulders, we find cushions of moss campion and saxifrage, plants so low to the ground they're almost part of the rock itself. Up here, being tall is a liability, the wind would shred anything that rises above the stones. So these plants grow in dense mats, hugging the earth, finding protection in lowness rather than height. Their flowers, when they bloom, are disproportionately large and bright, brilliant pink and yellow explosions of color from plants barely an inch tall. They prove that stature and impact are related, that the smallest voices can sing the loudest songs, that keeping close to the ground doesn't mean you can't reach for beauty. We climb over a final rise and suddenly find ourselves at the shore of an alpine lake, its surface mirror still, reflecting the lightning sky. The water is so clear we can see straight to the bottom, where smooth stones lie undisturbed. This lake was formed by glacial melt, carved by ice that's long since vanished, and it's filled by snowmelt and rain, pure and cold. In some alpine lakes, the water is so cold and so pure that organic matter decomposes incredibly slowly. Leaves that fall and might remain recognizable for years. Time moves differently here, slowed by cold and altitude, everything preserved, everything patient. At the lake's edge, we notice a marmot sitting upright on a rock, perfectly still, looking out over the water. Marmots are social creatures, living in colonies, but this one seems content in solitary observation, watching the day prepare to be born. For much of the year, marmots hibernate, 8 months or more spent in deep sleep underground, their body temperature dropping close to freezing, their heart rate slowing to just a few beats per minute. They spend 2/3 of their lives asleep, and they emerge none the worse for it, ready to enjoy the brief alpine summer with what seems like genuine joy, whistling to each other across the rocks. They've mastered the balance between activity and rest, giving each its proper season, knowing when to work and when to sleep and never confusing the two. The sky continues to lighten, and now we can see the summit of the mountain above us, still some distance away but closer than it was. The rocks here are ancient, some of the oldest on Earth, billions of years old, formed in the planet's early days, thrust upward by tectonic forces, worn by wind and ice in time, yet still standing. They're the bones of the world, exposed here where the soil is too thin to cover them, and they radiate a sense of permanence that's deeply calming. Empires rise and fall, species come and go, but these stones remain, witnesses to everything, disturbed by nothing. And here, beside this glacial lake, surrounded by ancient stones and patient lichens, by low-growing flowers and hibernating marmots, by pikas with their hay piles and crumholes, forests that redefine what it means to be a tree, you can feel yourself settling into this same timelessness, this same patience that measures itself in centuries and millennia rather than minutes and hours. The dawn is coming, yes, but slowly, gently, in its own time, and there's no need to rush toward it. The darkness has been good to us. The night has held us safely. And even as light approaches, we can rest here a while longer, held by stone and water, by thin air and deep time, by the knowledge that everything in nature knows when to wake and when to sleep, and right now, sleep is still the wisest choice. We rise from the lake's edge and begin the final ascent, following a path that winds between rocks and patches of low vegetation. The air is so thin here that each breath feels deliberate, conscious, and our pace naturally slows to match the altitude. There's no rushing at this height, the mountain itself enforces a meditative rhythm, teaching us through our own breathing that haste has no place in elevated spaces. As we climb, we notice how the landscape becomes even more spare, more essential. There are no excess flourishes here, no unnecessary adornments. Every plant, every creature, every rock serves a purpose or it wouldn't exist. The environment is too harsh for anything frivolous. And yet, Paradoxically, this austerity creates its own form of beauty, the beauty of simplicity, of things reduced to their essence. A single flower growing from a crack in the rock is more striking than an entire meadow below, because here, every bloom is a small miracle of persistence. We pass patches of snow that have survived the summer, compressed and crystalline, waiting patiently for winter to return and reclaim the mountain. Snow is one of nature's perfect structures, each flake a unique hexagonal crystal, no two exactly alike despite billions upon billions falling throughout Earth's history. But here's what's remarkable: snow crystals form their intricate patterns spontaneously, automatically, as water vapor freezes. There's no blueprint, no plan, just the inherent properties of water molecules arranging themselves according to simple physical laws. Complexity and beauty emerge naturally from simplicity, without effort, without intention. The snow teaches us that we don't need to force beauty into being, it arises on its own when conditions are right. Higher still, and we enter a zone where almost nothing grows. This is the realm of rock and ice, of wind and sky. The stones here show evidence of frost weathering, cracks formed when water seeps in, freezes, expands, and gradually breaks the rock apart. This process has been happening for thousands of years, millions of years, slowly fragmenting solid stone into smaller and smaller pieces. It's patient destruction, gentle enough that you could sit and watch for a lifetime and never see it change, yet powerful enough that given enough time, it can reduce entire mountains to sand. The rocks teach us that even the mightiest structures eventually yield, that nothing is permanent, and that there's a kind of peace in accepting our own eventual dissolution. We're very high now, and the sky has transformed from deep blue to a softer shade, the color of forget-me-nots, of robin's eggs, of distance. Below us, the world is still dark, but here, at this altitude, we're catching light that hasn't yet reached the valleys. We're between night and day, between earth and sky, in a liminal space where ordinary rules seem suspended. A raven appears, riding the wind currents that sweep across the summit. Ravens can fly at altitudes of over 20,000 feet, higher than most birds dare to venture. They're intelligent, playful creatures, and this one seems to be flying not for any purpose but for the simple joy of it, barrel rolling in the wind, diving and climbing, calling out in a voice that echoes off the rocks. Ravens mate for life, staying with their partners for decades, and they've been observed engaging in what can only be described as play, sliding down snow-covered slopes repeatedly for no reason except apparent enjoyment. They remind us that life doesn't have to be all purpose and productivity, that play has value, that joy is its own justification. We continue upward, and now the summit is close, we can see it clearly, a final rocky outcrop rising against the brightening sky. Our legs are tired, our breath comes harder, but there's something drawing us on, some promise of arrival, of completion. And then, with a final few steps, we're there. We've reached the top. The summit is smaller than we expected, just a small plateau of rock, barely large enough for a few people to stand. But the view extends forever. In every direction, we can see mountains marching away to the horizon, wave after wave of peaks, some still dark, some beginning to catch the light. The clouds below us look like a second ocean, soft and white, filling the valleys like water. We settle ourselves on the rocks, facing east, and wait. The sky continues its slow transformation, deep blue fading to turquoise, then to gold at the horizon. A few stars still linger overhead, the brightest ones refusing to surrender to the coming day. Venus hangs brilliant in the east, the morning star, herald of the sun. In ancient times, people didn't know that the morning star and the evening star were the same planet, appearing in different parts of the sky at different times. They thought they were two separate celestial beings, not realizing that what appears in the evening to bid farewell is the same thing that appears in the morning to greet the new day. There's something profound in that, the idea that endings and beginnings might be the same thing, seen from different perspectives. The horizon begins to glow, not the sun yet, but its promise. The light spreads slowly, gradually, transforming the quality of everything it touches. The rocks around us, gray in darkness, reveal subtle colors, rust and ochre and pale green. The world is being painted, slowly, stroke by patient stroke. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, a curve of brilliant gold appears at the horizon. The sun, rising for the billionth time in Earth's history, rising as it has every day for 4.5 billion years, rising as it will continue to do for billions more. It's the most common miracle, the most reliable wonder, and yet seeing it from this height, after this journey through darkness, it feels like witnessing creation itself. The light expands, spills across the landscape, touches the distant peaks one by one, turning them gold and pink and orange. Below us, the ocean of clouds begins to glow from within, transformed from gray to white to incandescent pearl. Shadows retreat down the mountainsides, and everywhere, there is light. We've traveled through the entire night, through forests and meadows, across deserts and wetlands, beside oceans and streams, through canyons and cloud forests, up slopes and past lakes, following a path that led us from darkness toward this moment of light. And now, sitting here at the summit as day breaks over the world, we can feel the completion of something, the closing of a circle. The sun continues its steady climb, and warmth begins to touch our face. Somewhere far below, birds are beginning to sing. Flowers are opening their petals. Nocturnal creatures are finding their burrows. The world is waking, as it always does, as it always will, following rhythms older than memory, deeper than thought. But you don't need to wake yet. The journey is complete, the summit reached, the dawn witnessed. And now, having seen the light, having felt its warmth, you can finally, completely, let go. The sun will continue rising without your attention. The day will unfold without your participation. Everything will be exactly as it should be. So rest now, here at the top of the world, held by ancient stone, warmed by new light, surrounded by the eternal cycling of darkness and dawn. Your breathing slows. Your body releases. Your mind finally quiets. The mountain holds you. The sun rises. And you drift, peacefully, into the deepest, most well-earned sleep, knowing that you've completed your journey, that you've witnessed beauty, that you've walked through darkness and arrived, safely, at light. Sleep now. The world will keep turning. And when you wake, whenever that may be, a new day will be waiting, patient and bright and full of gentle wonders. Though the summit has been reached and the sun has risen, there's no need to descend just yet. We can linger here a while longer, resting in the warmth of early morning light, watching as the world below gradually awakens. The journey doesn't have to end abruptly. Nature teaches us that transitions are gradual, that there's value in the space between arrival and departure. The sun climbs higher, and its light reveals details we couldn't see before. The rocks beneath us are covered in tiny crystals, quartz and feldspar catching the light, turning the stone into something that sparkles subtly, modestly, like the mountain is sharing a quiet secret. These crystals formed deep underground, under immense pressure and heat, millions of years ago. They were forged in darkness and violence, yet they emerge as beauty, as light catchers, as tiny prisms that split sunlight into rainbow glimmers too small to see unless you look closely. They remind us that our difficult experiences, our times of pressure and heat, might be forming something crystalline within us, something that will catch light in ways we can't yet imagine. A golden eagle soars past, riding a thermal updraft that rises from the warming valleys below. Eagles have extraordinary vision. They can see prey from over 2 miles away, spotting a rabbit moving in grass from heights that would make such detail invisible to human eyes. But here's something remarkable. Despite this incredible long-distance vision, eagles can also see ultraviolet light, revealing patterns and colors completely invisible to us. They experience a richer, more complex visual world than we can imagine. It's a reminder that our perception, however complete it seems, is only one way of experiencing reality. There are always other ways of seeing, other dimensions of beauty we might be missing, and that's perfectly fine. We can only experience what we're built to experience, and that's enough. The warmth increases, and we notice movement among the rocks. A small butterfly, one of the few insects that can survive at this altitude. Alpine butterflies have dark wings that absorb heat quickly, allowing them to warm up faster in the thin mountain air. But they also have a remarkable adaptation. They can fly even when their body temperature is far lower than butterflies in the lowlands require. They've pushed the boundaries of what's possible, learning to function in conditions that would ground their valley cousins. On cold mornings, they bask on sun-warmed rocks, wings spread to collect every available ray of warmth, patient and still until they've gathered enough energy to fly. They show us that sometimes we need to pause and gather strength before we can move forward, that there's no shame in waiting for warmth, for the right conditions, for the moment when flight becomes possible. Below us, the cloud ocean begins to dissipate as the sun's heat causes the moisture to evaporate back into invisible vapor. The clouds aren't destroyed, they're transformed, changing from visible to invisible, from liquid to gas, still present but in a different form. By afternoon, as the earth warms, some of this moisture will rise and condense again into new clouds, and the cycle will continue. Nothing is ever truly lost in nature, only transformed, only moved from one state to another and back again. The clouds teach us about impermanence without loss, about change without ending, about forms that dissolve only to reform elsewhere. As visibility improves, we can see further down the mountain to where the tree line begins again. Even from here, we can see how the trees closest to the summit are smaller, more weathered, how they increase in size and vigor as they descend into more protected zones. It's a visible gradient of life responding to conditions, each organism finding its own perfect zone, the place where it can not just survive but thrive. Not every tree needs to climb to the summit. Not every flower needs to bloom in the harshest conditions. There's honor in finding your own optimal altitude, your own zone of thriving, wherever that might be. A mountain goat appears on a distant ridge, moving across terrain that looks impossible, sheer rock faces, narrow ledges, slopes that seem to offer no foothold. Mountain goats have specialized hooves with soft, rubbery pads that grip rock like natural climbing shoes, and they possess an extraordinary sense of balance honed over millions of years of evolution. They're completely at home in places where we would be terrified, moving with calm confidence across landscapes we'd consider deadly. They remind us that what's challenging for one being might be comfortable for another, that we each have our own terrain where we move with confidence and grace, and that comparing our comfort zones is meaningless. We're built for different mountains. The morning continues its gentle unfurling, and we notice how the quality of light keeps changing. The harsh gold of sunrise softens into something gentler, warmer, more diffused. Light at different times of day has different colors, different temperatures, different characters. Photographers call the hour after sunrise the golden hour, when light is warm and shadows are long and everything seems suffused with a gentle glow. We're in that golden hour now, and everything it touches looks more beautiful, more forgiving, more peaceful. It's a reminder that timing matters, that the same landscape can feel completely different depending on when we see it, that sometimes we need to wait for the right light to see things as they truly are. A marmot whistle echoes from somewhere below, one calling to another, communicating across the distance. The sound carries clearly in the thin mountain air, traveling further than it would at lower altitudes. Up here, sound behaves differently. Words spoken normally seem louder, sharper. Silence seems deeper. Everything is amplified and clarified. It's as if the altitude strips away the muffling effects of denser air, leaving only essentials. In the same way, perhaps difficulties and challenges can strip away what's unnecessary in our lives, leaving only what matters, only what's essential, only what's true. We take a deep breath of the mountain air, so clean and clear it almost hurts. At this altitude, there are fewer particles, less pollution, less of everything that clouds and complicates the air at sea level. It's air reduced to its essence, oxygen and nitrogen and not much else. Breathing it feels like purification, like each inhalation is cleaning something inside us, clearing away accumulation, simplifying what has become complex. The sun continues climbing, and we know that eventually we'll need to descend, to return to the world below, to re-enter the complexity and density of lower altitudes. But not yet. For now, we can simply sit here in this rare, thin, clear place, feeling the warmth on our skin, hearing the whistle of marmots and the cry of eagles, watching light play across ancient stone, breathing air that tastes like distance and height and purity. And you, resting here in imagination, can feel this same clarity, this same simplicity. Your breath is easy. Your body is still. Your mind has found its own summit, its own high place of peace and rest. Stay here as long as you need. The mountain has no schedule. The sun will continue its arc across the sky. And you are held, safely, in this elevated place of rest. The time has come to begin our descent, though we do so slowly, reluctantly, savoring these final moments at elevation. The journey down is always different from the journey up, gentler on the lungs, harder on the knees, and offering perspectives we missed in darkness. We can see now what we only felt before, can recognize landmarks that were invisible on our nighttime ascent. As we make our way down from the summit, we notice how the mountain is fully awake now. Pikas emerge from their rocky homes, calling to each other with high-pitched chirps that sound almost like squeaky toys. They're social creatures despite their solitary appearance, maintaining territories that border each other, calling back and forth throughout the day in what seems like conversation. Each pika knows its neighbors, recognizes their individual calls, maintains relationships that can last for years. Even in this harsh landscape, community persists. Even among creatures that don't share burrows, connection matters. They show us that we can maintain our independence while still being part of something larger, that solitude and community aren't opposites but complements. We pass again by the alpine lake, and in daylight it's even more beautiful, so clear we can count the stones at the bottom, see small fish darting through the shallows. These are trout that have adapted to the cold, high-altitude water. They grow slowly here, much slower than their lowland relatives, because the cold slows their metabolism. A fish that might reach full size in 3 years at lower elevations might take 7 or 8 years here. But they also live longer, sometimes twice as long as their faster-growing cousins. Slow growth, it turns out, often correlates with longevity. The quick path isn't always the best path. There's value in taking time, in developing slowly, in not rushing toward maturity. The mountain trout have learned that patience extends life. As we descend below the boulder field, we enter again the zone where plants begin to appear, first the low cushions of moss campion and saxifrage, then gradually taller vegetation as we drop in altitude. It's like watching time run backward, seeing evolution in reverse as we move from the sparse and simple toward the complex and abundant. Each zone we pass through represents thousands of years of adaptation, countless generations of plants and animals learning to survive in specific conditions. The mountain is a living laboratory, a gradual gradient from the possible to the impossible, and every organism has found its exact place on that spectrum. We pause in a meadow that we passed through in darkness, and now we can see what we missed: wildflowers in brilliant profusion, their colors almost shocking after the monochrome palette of the high peaks. Indian paintbrush in scarlet, lupin in deep purple, arnica in golden yellow. These flowers bloom for only a few weeks each year, but they do so with absolute commitment, holding nothing back, investing everything in this brief moment of color and reproduction. There's something admirable in that wholehearted engagement, that refusal to conserve energy for a future that might not come, that decision to be fully, vibrantly present in the narrow window of possibility. A marmot lounges on a rock in the full sun, completely relaxed, belly exposed, looking like the picture of contentment. After months of hibernation, after the long dark cold underground, these summer days must feel like pure luxury. The marmot isn't worrying about the winter to come, isn't anxious about future hibernation. Right now, the sun is warm, the grass is green, and that's enough. The future will take care of itself. Right now deserves full attention, full appreciation, full presence. The marmot, sprawled in perfect ease, is a teacher of presence, of savoring what is rather than fearing what will be. We continue downward, and the Crumholes forest appears again, those wind-stunted trees growing in their peculiar horizontal fashion. In daylight, we can see how intricate they are, how their branches weave together, how they create small sheltered microclimates beneath their dense growth. Birds nest in these twisted branches, rodents burrow beneath them, insects make homes in their gnarled bark. The trees that couldn't grow tall have instead created horizontal ecosystems, proving once again that limitation can inspire creativity, that when one path is blocked, life finds another way. The air grows gradually thicker, easier to breathe, as we lose altitude. It's a relief to our lungs, though something in us already misses the clarity of the heights. But this is the rhythm of life, ascending and descending, reaching for peaks and returning to valleys, experiencing both the rarefied and the abundant. We need both. The mountain teaches us to climb, but it also teaches us to descend, to return, to bring what we learned at elevation back down to where we live. We enter the upper reaches of the cloud forest again, and the mist wraps around us like a familiar embrace. The twisted trees, the hanging lichens, the moss-covered everything, it all seems even more enchanted in daylight, even though the light here is dim and filtered. A small stream runs beside the path, its water clear and cold, recently melted from snow higher up. The stream is young here, just beginning its long journey down the mountain, through forests and meadows, eventually joining rivers that will carry it to the sea. It has thousands of miles ahead of it, countless transformations awaiting, from stream to river, from fresh to salt, from liquid to vapor to rain to snow and back to liquid again. The water doesn't know its future, doesn't plan its route. It simply flows downward, following gravity, accepting whatever channel it finds, becoming whatever it needs to become, trusting the journey completely. A tiny tree frog, bright green and no bigger than a thumbnail, clings to a leaf beside the path. These frogs have adhesive toe pads that allow them to climb vertical surfaces, to live their entire lives in the canopy, never touching the ground. They're so small, so vulnerable looking, yet they've survived in these forests for millions of years through flexibility, through adaptation, through finding their own specific niche and mastering it completely. Size doesn't determine success. Strength isn't the only path to survival. Sometimes being small means being overlooked by predators, fitting into spaces others can't reach, needing less food, less territory, less of everything. The tiny frog, clinging to its leaf, is perfectly sized for its life, perfectly adapted for its world. The descent continues, gentle and gradual, and with each step downward the forest grows fuller, greener, more alive with sound and movement. We're returning to abundance, to complexity, to the rich tangle of lowland life. The peace of the heights was profound, but there's a different kind of peace here too, the peace of being surrounded by life, of being part of the web, of existing within rather than above. And you, following this descending path in your mind, can feel yourself sinking deeper too, not into sleep exactly but into a state of profound rest that's aware and asleep at the same time, present and absent, here and somewhere else entirely. The journey continues, gentle and endless, and there's no need to reach any particular destination. The walking itself is enough. The gradual descent is enough. This moment, this breath, this peaceful progression from height to depth, from stark clarity to soft abundance, this is enough. We descend further through the cloud forest, and the path becomes softer beneath our feet, cushioned by centuries of moss and decaying leaves. The mist has thickened again, wrapping us in its cool embrace, and visibility shrinks to just a few feet in any direction. But there's no anxiety in this limited vision. Instead, it creates a sense of intimacy, of being held in a small, safe pocket of the world. As we walk, we notice a fallen log beside the path, and it's become an entire world unto itself. The wood is soft with decay, covered in moss and fungi, dotted with tiny ferns and seedlings. This is what they call a nurse log, a dead tree that gives life to dozens of new organisms. As it slowly decomposes over decades, it releases nutrients back into the soil, provides a raised platform above the competition of the forest floor, holds moisture like a sponge. Some of the forest's largest trees began their lives on nurse logs, their roots eventually straddling the rotting wood, and when the nurse log finally decomposes completely, the tree is left standing on stilted roots like a living archway. Death becomes life. Endings become beginnings. Nothing is wasted, nothing is final. The cycle continues, patient and perfect. Nearby, we hear a sound like distant bells, the call of a bell bird, though we cannot see it through the mist. The bird's call is one of the loudest in the natural world, yet it sounds gentle, musical, almost otherworldly in the fog-muted forest. The male bird calls to attract a mate, but here's something remarkable: he can modulate his volume, calling softly when a female is nearby, louder when he's alone. He knows when to whisper and when to shout. He doesn't waste energy broadcasting at full volume unnecessarily. There's wisdom in that modulation, in knowing when intensity is needed and when gentleness serves better, and saving our loudest voice for when it truly matters. We continue down, and gradually the cloud forest begins to transition back into lowland rainforest. The trees grow taller, the canopy thickens, and the mist starts to break up, replaced by the filtered green light we remember from our night journey. But now, in daylight, we can see what we only sensed before: the incredible layering of life, plants growing on plants, vines wrapping trunks, epiphytes covering branches, everything interconnected in a three-dimensional web of green. A morpho butterfly flutters past, and its wings flash electric blue, a blue so vivid it seems almost artificial. But here's the fascinating thing: the wings aren't actually blue. They have no blue pigment at all. Instead, microscopic structures on the wing scales reflect light in a way that creates the illusion of brilliant blue. It's structural color, created by the architecture of the wing itself rather than by any dye or chemical. The butterfly's beauty is built into its very structure, into the way it's made, into its fundamental form. It reminds us that our own qualities, what makes us unique, what makes us beautiful, might be structural too, built into who we are at the deepest level, not something we need to add or acquire but something we need only to reveal. The path leads us to a strangler fig we passed in darkness, and now we can see its full magnificence, the intricate lattice of roots that have completely replaced the host tree that once stood here. The hollow center creates a natural chamber, cool and dim, and we step inside, looking up through the intertwined roots to the canopy far above. Light filters down in thin beams, illuminating dancing motes of pollen and spores. Standing inside this living architecture, we're reminded that transformation can be both destruction and creation, that what looks like one thing from outside might be something completely different from within, that endings and beginnings are so intertwined we can't always tell where one stops and the other begins. We emerge from the fig and continue our descent, and now we begin to hear something new, or rather, many new things. The forest is alive with sound. Birds calling, insects humming, frogs croaking, leaves rustling, branches creaking. Where the mountain was spare and silent, the rainforest is abundant and symphonic. But it's not chaos. Each sound has its place, its time, its frequency. Birds sing in the canopy, frogs call from the understory, insects buzz at all levels, and somehow it all fits together, each voice finding its own acoustic space, no two competing for exactly the same sonic territory. It's an orchestra without a conductor, harmony arising from countless individuals each playing their own part, listening to each other, making space for each other's songs. A three-toed sloth hangs motionless from a branch above us, and even knowing where to look, we almost can't see her. The algae growing in her fur camouflages her perfectly against the moss-covered branch. She's been in nearly the same position since we passed beneath her in darkness, and she'll likely be there for hours more. Sloths defecate only once a week, climbing down from the canopy to the forest floor, a dangerous journey that exposes them to predators. Scientists long wondered why they take this risk when they could simply release from the trees. The answer is remarkable. By returning to the same spot at the tree's base, they're fertilizing their own food source, ensuring the tree stays healthy. Even in their extreme slowness, even in what looks like laziness, they're maintaining relationships, caring for what sustains them, participating in the cycle of giving and receiving. Lower still, and we're approaching the forest floor again, that dark, rich world of decomposition and renewal. A column of army ants crosses the path, thousands of them moving in a river of bodies, carrying larvae and food, relocating their entire colony to a new bivouac site. Army ants have no permanent home. They're nomadic, constantly moving, and yet they're fiercely organized, each ant playing its role perfectly. Some carry the young, some carry food, some form the edges of the column for protection, some scout ahead. The queen walks in the center, protected by thousands of workers. They build no nest, instead, they form living structures with their own bodies, thousands of ants linking together to create a bivouac, a living nest that can expand or contract as needed. They are the architecture. They are the colony. Individual and collective are inseparable. We're deep in the forest now, nearly at the level we started from what feels like a lifetime ago. The air is thick and humid, rich with the smell of growth and decay happening simultaneously. A bromeliad nearby is blooming, a brilliant red flower spike emerging from the center of the plant, an explosion of color in the green dimness. The plant might be 30 years old, and this is its first and only bloom. After flowering and producing seeds, the main plant will die, but it will leave behind offshoots, pups that will continue the line. One life ends, new lives begin, the pattern continues. The bromeliad doesn't mourn its approaching death or try to extend its bloom beyond its natural time. It flowers fully, completely, then gracefully makes way for the next generation. And so we continue down, deeper into the green cathedral of the rainforest, surrounded by the patient work of growth and decay, by creatures that have perfected the art of living slowly, by plants that bloom once and die without regret, by ants that are both individual and colony, by butterflies whose beauty is structural, by birds that know when to whisper and when to sing. The path descends. The forest breathes. And you, drifting through this green world, can feel yourself dissolving into it, becoming part of the cycle, part of the web, part of the endless patient transformation of everything into everything else. The forest floor levels out now, and we find ourselves walking beside the stream we followed in darkness, the same water, but transformed by daylight into something sparkling and clear. We can see now what we only heard before, the water sliding over smooth stones, pooling in shallow basins, catching light and scattering it in 1,000 tiny reflections. We kneel beside the water and notice something we missed in the darkness, mayflies dancing above the surface, their movements delicate and purposeful. Mayflies live most of their lives as aquatic nymphs, sometimes for years, buried in the streambed. But when they finally emerge as adults, they live for only a day, sometimes just a few hours. In that brief time, they must find a mate, reproduce, and complete their life's purpose. They don't eat, don't rest, they simply dance in the sunlight, mate, lay eggs, and die. It seems tragic to us, this brevity, but the mayflies don't know they're missing anything. Their single day is their whole lifetime, complete and sufficient. They remind us that duration and fullness aren't the same thing, that a short experience can be complete, that we shouldn't measure the value of something by how long it lasts. The stream widens slightly, and in a quiet pool we see a heron standing motionless, her reflection perfect in the still water. She could be the same heron we saw in darkness, or another of her kind, it doesn't matter. She stands in the same patient posture, waiting with a stillness so complete she seems more like an idea of a heron than an actual bird. Her breathing is slow, measured, barely visible. She can stand this way for an hour or more, completely present, completely patient, waiting for the moment when a fish comes within range. There's no restlessness in her waiting, no impatience, no sense that she'd rather be somewhere else. This moment, this standing, this waiting, this is her life, and it's enough. She teaches us that waiting isn't wasted time, that stillness is its own form of action, that presence requires no movement to be complete. We leave the stream and follow a path that leads us through a grove of palms, their fronds creating a latticed ceiling overhead. Palm trees are remarkable in their simplicity. They have no branches, no complex architecture, just a single trunk topped with leaves. Yet they're among the most successful plants on Earth, found on every continent except Antarctica. They've thrived for 80 million years with this simple design, proving that complexity isn't required for success, that sometimes the simplest solution is the most enduring. The palm trees sway gently in a breeze we can barely feel, their fronds making a soft rustling sound like distant rain. They bend without breaking, yielding to wind rather than resisting it, demonstrating again the wisdom of flexibility, of moving with forces rather than against them. At the base of one palm, we discover a hermit crab making its way across the forest floor, an unexpected sight this far from the ocean, but some species have adapted to terrestrial life. The crab carries its borrowed shell, a mobile home it will trade for a larger one as it grows. Hermit crabs are born without the hard protective covering that other crabs have, so they must find shells abandoned by other creatures and make them their own. They're constantly seeking, constantly upgrading, moving from shell to shell throughout their lives. But here's something touching. When hermit crabs find a shell that's too large for them, they don't simply discard it. They wait beside it, and when other hermit crabs arrive, they form a line by size, each waiting for the crab above them to move into a larger shell, creating a chain reaction where everyone moves up. They've learned that cooperation benefits everyone, that waiting for others creates opportunities for all, that individual advancement and collective well-being aren't opposed. The path curves through a stand of bamboo, and inside this grove the world transforms. The light is filtered green gold, and the bamboo stalks create vertical lines that draw the eye upward. Bamboo is one of the fastest growing plants on Earth. Some species can grow 3 feet in a single day, fast enough that if you watched carefully, you could actually see the movement. But here's the paradox. Bamboo spends years, sometimes decades, growing an extensive root system underground before sending up any shoots at all. When it finally does grow above ground, that growth is explosive because the foundation was so thoroughly prepared. The bamboo teaches us about invisible preparation, about work that happens beneath the surface, about the importance of roots we can't see supporting growth we can. As we walk through the bamboo, we hear it creaking and groaning, not from wind, but simply from growing, from the stalks rubbing against each other as they expand. It's an eerie sound, almost musical, like the forest itself is singing. In some cultures, bamboo groves are considered sacred spaces, places where the boundary between worlds grows thin. It's easy to understand why. There's something otherworldly about walking through these vertical forests, about being surrounded by plants that grow so fast they're audible, about the quality of light and sound inside the grove. We emerge from the bamboo into open forest again, and ahead we can see brightness, not the green-filtered light of the canopy, but true daylight, unobstructed. We're approaching the forest's edge, the boundary between the wild and the cultivated, between the ancient and the present. But we're not quite there yet. There's still a little distance to cover, still a bit more of the journey to savor. A family of coatis crosses the path ahead of us, the mother leading, for young ones following in a line, their ringed tails held high like flags. Coatis are social animals, living in bands of up to 30 individuals, mostly females and young. The males are solitary, joining the group only during mating season. It's a matriarchal society where females make the decisions, lead the movements, determine the group's direction. The young follow their mother with complete trust, going where she goes, learning what she teaches, knowing that her experience will keep them safe. They remind us of the importance of following those who know the way, of trusting in guidance, of the value of accumulated wisdom passed from one generation to the next. The light grows brighter ahead, but we slow our pace, reluctant to leave the forest's embrace. There's a sweetness in these final moments under the canopy, a gentle melancholy in approaching the end of the journey. But endings are natural. Journeys are meant to be completed. And there's beauty in the approaching edge, in the transition from one world to another, in the moment before emergence. We pause at the base of a final tree, an ancient ceiba, sacred in many traditions, its massive buttressed roots creating cathedral-like spaces, its trunk disappearing into the canopy far above. We place our hand on its bark, feeling the rough texture, the solidity, the aliveness of it. The tree has been here for hundreds of years and will likely be here for hundreds more, outliving us by lifetimes, witnessing cycles we can barely imagine. But in this moment, we're contemporaries, sharing this exact point in time, both of us alive, both of us breathing, both of us here. The tree asks nothing of us. It simply stands, rooted and reaching, doing what trees do, being what trees are. And that's enough. That's always been enough. We take a breath, deep and full and grateful, and continue toward the light. We take those final steps toward the forest's edge, and the light grows brighter with each footfall. The canopy opens above us, the dense green giving way to sky, and suddenly we're standing at the threshold, one foot still in shadow, one in sunlight, balanced between the world we've been traveling through and the world beyond. Before us stretches a meadow, golden in the late morning sun, grasses swaying gently in a breeze that smells of warmth and open space. The contrast is striking. After so long in the forest's green twilight, the brightness is almost overwhelming, but in the most welcome way, like waking from a beautiful dream into an equally beautiful reality. We step fully into the meadow, and the sunlight falls across our shoulders like a blessing. Butterflies drift past, monarchs, with their distinctive orange and black wings, making their way south on a journey that spans generations. No single monarch completes the full migration. Instead, it takes 4 or 5 generations to make the round trip, each butterfly living just long enough to carry the journey forward before passing the responsibility to the next generation. They're part of something larger than themselves, participants in a story that began long before they were born and will continue long after they're gone. And somehow, without maps, without leaders, Without any individual knowing the complete route, they find their way, guided by instinct, by the angle of the sun, by an internal compass we're only beginning to understand. They trust the journey completely, even though they'll never see its completion. In the tall grasses, we hear crickets singing, not the slowed, cooling song of evening, but the full-throated chorus of midday warmth. Each cricket is singing his own song, yet together they create a rhythm, a pulse, a collective heartbeat of the meadow. If you listen closely, really closely, you can hear how they're not quite synchronized, each slightly out of phase with the others, creating a shimmering effect, a texture to the sound that perfect synchronization would lack. Nature often prefers this near synchronization to perfect unison, finding beauty in the slight variations, in the individual voices that blend without losing their distinctiveness. We find a smooth stone in the meadow and sit, letting the sun warm us fully now. The stone beneath us was once part of the mountain we climbed. All stone comes from mountains, eventually, carried down by water and ice in time, smoothed by its journey, settling finally in valleys and meadows and plains. This stone might be 1,000,000 years old, might have been tumbled in glacial rivers, buried in sediment, exposed again by erosion, traveled miles and miles to end up here, in this exact spot, warm beneath this exact sun, supporting us in this exact moment. Its journey has been longer than we can imagine, and yet it seems content to be here now, still and warm and sufficient. A dragonfly lands on a grass stem nearby, its wings catching the light, creating tiny rainbows in the transparent membranes. Dragonflies are ancient. Their ancestors were flying 300 million years ago, before dinosaurs, before flowers, before most of the life forms we think of as fundamental to Earth. They've witnessed the entire evolution of terrestrial life, and they've barely changed, finding a form so successful, so perfect for their needs, that evolution saw no reason to alter it. The dragonfly that rests beside us is essentially the same as dragonflies that hunted over prehistoric swamps, proving again that there's wisdom in knowing when you've arrived at your true form, when further change is unnecessary. The sun is high now, warm but not hot, and we can feel its light soaking into us, warming not just our skin but something deeper, our bones, our blood, our very center. Sunlight is ancient too. The light touching us now left the sun 8 minutes ago, traveling 93 million miles through space to arrive at this meadow, at this moment, to warm this stone and this skin. We're being touched by a star, connected to the nuclear furnace at the center of our solar system, receiving energy that began as fusion in the sun's core, made its way to the surface, and then journeyed through the void to find us. We're part of the solar system, part of the cosmic dance, made of elements forged in stars long dead. We're not separate from the universe, we're expressions of it, temporary arrangements of stardust, experiencing itself, aware and awake and wondering. A hawk circles high overhead, riding thermals we cannot feel, spiraling higher and higher with barely a wing beat. From up there, she can see for miles, the meadow we're in, the forest we emerged from, the mountains beyond, perhaps even a glimpse of ocean in the far distance. She has perspective we can't match, can see the whole landscape as a unified pattern, can understand connections we can only sense. But she can't see what we can see, the individual blade of grass, the cricket hidden in the stalks, the texture of the stone beneath us. Neither view is better, they're simply different, each valuable, each true. The hawk sees breadth, we see depth, and both are needed to understand the whole. The meadow grasses rustle and part, and a deer steps out from the far tree line, the same species we saw in the first forest so long ago, at the beginning of our journey. She walks slowly, stopping every few steps to test the air, to look and listen. She makes her way to the center of the meadow and then, apparently satisfied that all is safe, she lowers herself to the ground, folding her legs beneath her, settling into the sun-warmed grass. And there she rests, in plain sight, trusting the meadow, trusting the day, trusting that this moment of vulnerability is safe enough, that rest is worth the risk. We watch her for a long moment, and then we too lie back on the warm stone, looking up at the sky. Clouds drift past, not the thick blanket of the valleys, not the mist of the cloud forest, but individual clouds, white and distinct against the deep blue. Each one is temporary, forming and dissolving, changing shape as we watch. They're made of water that was once ocean, that evaporated and rose and condensed into these floating sculptures that will soon dissolve again, becoming rain or simply vanishing back into invisible vapor. They teach us one final lesson about impermanence, about the beauty of things that don't last, about the value of presence precisely because nothing stays the same. Our eyes grow heavy in the warmth. The cricket song continues its gentle pulse. The deer rests in her sunny spot. The hawk spirals higher, becoming a speck, then disappearing into the blue. The butterflies continue their generational journey. The dragonfly waits on its stem, ancient and patient. The stone holds us, warm and solid. The sun shines, as it has for billions of years, as it will for billions more. And we have completed our journey, from darkness to light, from forest to mountain to meadow, through water and stone and mist and sun, encountering countless lives, each one teaching us something about patience, about presence, about the art of being exactly what you are, exactly where you are, exactly when you are it. The journey is complete. The circle is closed. And now, finally, with the sun warm on your face and the earth solid beneath you, with the whole night's journey held in memory and the whole day's warmth held in your body, you can let go completely. Rest now, here in this sunlit meadow, surrounded by grass and stone and sky, held by the earth that holds everything, breathing in rhythm with the meadow's breath, part of the pattern, part of the web, part of the ancient, patient, beautiful unfolding of life. The crickets sing. The deer sleeps. The clouds drift. The sun shines. And you rest. Deeply. Peacefully. Completely. Sleep well, traveler. You've earned it.